Okay. Today, we are going to be taking a photographic journey of the Temple Mount. Now, this is based on an excellent exhibit they had about a year ago in the Tower of David Museum. Some of you might be familiar with it from the sound and light show they have at nights. So they also have a museum and they had a great exhibit. And when I saw the exhibit, I said, wow, this would make a really great class. So my class is based on the exhibit, and they also came out with a book called The Mount. So all the pictures that you'll see, it's from that book, and you see the credit on the bottom. I'm not taking any credit taking the pictures. I wish I was that talented to take pictures like that, but just know that it's from that. Okay. About once a month, I take the 216 bus to an area in Israel called Tish'a. It's one of my favorite areas. I have a really great friend that lives there. And anyone that's ever gone to the Dead Sea on a bus has passed by Tish'a. Now, on the way to Tish'a, I always make sure that I'm sitting on the side opposite the driver. And on the way home, back to Yerushalayim, I always make sure I'm sitting on his side. I also make sure I'm in the back of the bus and I'm on top. Now, I'm not usually so particular about where I sit. I got on a bus, wherever there's a seat, I take a seat. Except on this bus, I always make sure to sit in the same section. Why? Because there's something that I get a glimpse of for about 10 seconds, actually less, 5, but it's so special to me that it's worth it for me to make all these arrangements for my seat to make sure I'm sitting on the right side so I get the very best angle. What do I get a glimpse at when I go to Tish'a and back? I get a glimpse at Har HaBayit. Now, this was taken through a bus window. You can even see the scratches on the window. It's 5 seconds, but my eyes are drawn to the place, and it's one of the many things that remind me of how grateful I am to be living in Israel, that I could just be on a regular bus ride. I turn my head and I see where the Beit HaMikdash used to stand. Now, I asked myself often, and I think if the fact that you guys are here, you could relate a little bit, that there's something very captivating about Har HaBayit. I saw advertised a while back, there was a class on Har HaBayit, and the topic was the most explosive piece of real estate. I'm like, wow, what a catchy topic, and it's really true. So what is it that draws us to Har HaBayit? I want to share with you a quote that I read in the book that was put out by the Tower of David Museum that did this exhibit, and I loved it. I said, wow, this is so true. Jerusalem is probably the only city in the world where the story of the past dictates the future. I thought that was so powerful. I'm like, wow, really? Everything that goes on has to do with the past. And then if I pick a different place, let's say New York, you live in New York, you're not necessarily thinking of what happened when when New York was first founded, but Jerusalem is a place where the past is directly connected to what happens during the day, from day to day. We are going to focus on 3 questions today. One is, what is the significance of Har HaBayit? So some of you might be familiar with it. I know I like reminding myself because it's always good to be very sharp on these things. Next, what are some of the changes that Har HaBayit has undergone over time? And the third is, what is the status of Har HaBayit today? Okay, let's start with some names. So this dome that you see, my favorite, I use interchangeably, and you're going to be hearing throughout the next 20 minutes. I'll either call it the Temple Mount or Har HaBayit, because it is the mountain on which our temple once stood. Another name is the Dome of the Rock, or Kipat HaSela. Another name in Arabic is Al-Haram al-Sharif, the Noble Sanctuary. And another name that's used is Al-Aqsa, which is a general name for the plaza. Now, I will say that this last name is problematic because Al-Aqsa really refers to this mosque over here. You guys see this picture. We have Har HaBayit over here and this grayish mosque, which you could see if you go into the Kotel. This might be a more familiar picture to you. You have Har HaBayit on the left and Al-Aqsa on the right. That mosque is called the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and that's the 3rd holiest site in Islam, not the Dome of the Rock. But what they do today, and it's very confusing, even online, Wikipedia or just tons of websites, they'll call this Al-Aqsa as well, and they'll call the whole complex Al-Aqsa. Now, what's confusing about that is, well, if this specific mosque, this mosque over here is their holiest, but now they're giving that name to everything, then it sort of says, well, it's all equal holiness to us, and then it makes everyone want it more. But just so it's something to keep in mind, and I think the names that we use really are significant, which is why I'm very strict on myself that I call it Har HaBayit, Temple Mount, where our temple stood. That is how I want to refer to that place. What happened on Har HaBayit? So we're going to start from the very beginning. Har HaBayit, according to Jewish tradition, we see here a midrash from Midrash Tanchuma, where Har HaBayit, encased in it, and we'll see a picture in a minute, is the stone upon which the world was created. We see the last line. So here is a picture of it. If you, I wondered, why is it called the Dome of the Rock? What's inside? And about 10 years ago, I Googled, imaged it, and this is what I found. Inside Har HaBayit is a rock. That's why it's called Dome of the Rock. And it's not just any rock. It's the rock upon which, according to Jewish tradition and Muslim tradition as well, the world was created. So if you went inside, that's what you would see. Now, here's another picture of it. I really like this. This is a postcard I saw once in a store. I like that it's cut in half. And something else I also want to point out to you. Now, if you ever look at an aerial view of Har HaBayit, there's tons of little buildings and domes. We're not going to focus on every single one of them. And it's actually good homework for myself too, to find out what it is, because if this is a place that's so valuable to us and we want so badly, we should know everything about it. But I will point out that if you guys see on the left, this little dome over here, that's something called Kippat HaShalshelet. We'll see a picture of it later. Just keep in mind for your own knowledge. And this, where Kippat HaShalshelet is about the area of where when we had the Mizbeach, that's about where it stood. Okay. What else happened on Har HaBayit? Akedat Yitzchak, when Hashem told Abraham, Lech lecha al eretz hamoriyav, ha'aleu sham ne'olah, al achad ha'arim asher omar elecha. That took place where Har HaBayit is on Har HaMoriah. Whoever is not muted, if they could, thank you. The picture that you see is a mosaic from a synagogue in a place called Bet Alpha. Back in the time of the Mishnah and the Gemara, when they would decorate shuls, they would do it of mosaics, and it's so interesting to see what themes they chose. I know people are always looking for new places to go visit their trip in Israel, so I'm throwing one out to you. Go visit Bet Alpha and see their amazing synagogue. So that's another thing that happened. Of course, we have the Beit HaMikdash, the first and the second, which stood in that area, and specifically the Kodesh HaKodashim. Here's a picture of the Kohen Gadol and Yom Kippur. So that all is in the same area. So now to summarize, what happened on that area, Temple Mount, we have the foundation stone for the creation of the world, Akedat Yitzchak, the first Beit HaMikdash, the second Beit HaMikdash, and a lot of people always throw out, oh, didn't Yaakov had his dream? According to the Midrash, he did. If you go to Beit El today in Israel, they'll say he physically had his dream there, but that's something that I wanted to throw out as well. Okay, so we answered the first question. Now let's continue on to the next thing. What are some of the changes that Har HaBayit has undergone over time? So we're going to start with the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. So we'll call this the first Beit HaMikdash destroyed, rebuilt, second one destroyed again. Then for hundreds of years, Har HaBayit was rubble. It was not built, they didn't rebuild on it, it looked something like this. And then along came the Muslim rulers in the year 691, and they built this shrine. On top of it, I'm not calling it a mosque because it's not a mosque, even though it looks like one. The mosque, like I pointed out before, is the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the grayish one. This, they walk in the same way we might walk into a place and say Prakim Meftahirim. They might walk in and say Psukim from the Quran, but it's not a functioning mosque, the same way the Al-Aqsa Mosque is. And I will just throw out what is the importance to the Muslims of this whole complex. What do they say happened there? So in the Quran, it says that Muhammad, he rode on a winged horse to the mosque that was on the Katzeh, it was on the edge, and they say, oh, that's Al-Aqsa, and he went up to the sky, and he got the Mizbah of Tefillah for the Muslims, so they say that happened over here, and that's why it's important to them. Now you're going to take a photographic journey from 1839 to 2020. Now you might think that 1839 is a very random year. Why did I pick that year? So it is random. The reason why I chose that year is because that's the first year in which we have a photograph of Har HaBayit. Around then the camera was invented. I did a Google search to check myself. It said 1816, but I think the first workable portable camera that the average person could use was around this time. And around this time in Europe, there was this desire to come to Israel. The Middle East became this exotic place, and they wanted to come and they wanted to take pictures. They were also pushed by Christianity. And for those of you familiar with Christianity, a lot of it took place in Israel. There's always Christian pilgrims that are coming and going to different places. So they wanted to come and they wanted a photograph. And what did they say? So I got excited. It's so exciting to me to get to just see pictures of Har HaBayit. You should know that Har HaBayit is the most photographed place in Jerusalem. And we know from ourselves, some bar mitzvahs or any other trip, when you're taking a picture, you always want to make sure you want the kotel in the background. If you could get Har HaBayit, even better. You always want that in the background. So let's see what they took pictures of. And like I said before, all these pictures are taken from a book called The Mount, put out by the Tower of David Museum. Okay. So this might, according to this book, this might be the first photograph ever taken. Now, something that you'll notice, there's a few from this time period, is, and it doesn't even look like a picture, it looks like someone drew it, but it's a photograph. You'll see that they wanted to capture the size, and when we see pictures with people in it, you'll see how big the areas are relative to the people. So we see Har HaBayit up here. Now let's look at another one. Okay, another picture of Har HaBayit from 1844. And something, so this is a black and white picture, but the dome is actually not gold. It was gray, it was lead. And we'll talk about when that changed, when did it become the golden dome. Here's another picture. If you guys remember, I said, look out at Kipat HaShalshelet, which was that little dome right next to Har HaBayit. So this is Kipat HaShalshelet. And it's just this area now people sit on. I'm not really sure exactly why it was built. Like I said, it's the approximate area of where the Mizbeach was. So this is another really nice picture. I feel so special that I even get access to these pictures, and I'm very happy to share it with you today. Here is another picture, and I want you guys to notice the people. So we get a sense of really how big it is. Now, we've never, I shouldn't say I have never really gotten up close. So I could only picture how big it is. And I think this, looking at this photograph, it really gives us an understanding about how big it is in relation to the people. And I have a few cool pictures that I'm going to show you later where you'll get an understanding of that. This picture I love, Har HaBayit. Do you see it on the bottom, the caption, Dome of the Rock on a snowy day? So sometimes it does snow in Jerusalem, so that's a picture of it. Here is an example inside. Earlier, the Dome of the Rock. So here's another picture taken between 1900 and 1920. Okay, this one I also love. This is the inside of, if we look at the dome and they spread it out. So you notice here there's all Arabic calligraphy. Shout out, she might be on the Zoom, might not, but I have a friend, Lenore Cohen, who is very into Arabic calligraphy, and for someone who does it, they could really appreciate the intricacies of it and what's written is Pesukim on the Quran, and we see how intricate the design is on top. This picture I love. Now, is this not chronological? You see it's in 1995, but it was the same theme, so I thought it was appropriate to put it here. And this is the ceiling, and you see how beautiful it is. And you also see the, again, Arabic calligraphy with Pesukim from the Quran. Okay. Now, moving along in history, so we have the Islam, a bunch of different empires. We're fast forwarding a little bit to the British. The British now, in 1917, they take over Israel, and that's after 1,000 years of Muslim rule. And it wasn't the same dynasty ruling for 1,000 years, but it was basically Muslims. We had the Crusaders for a bit, but we have Muslims ruling. And now, with the end of the Muslim rule and the beginning of the British, the Jewish people, they say, wow, now we're really going to get a chance to go home, to rebuild our temple. With the Balfour Declaration, it gave them tons of hope. But at the same time that it gave the Jewish people hope to now realizing their national home, the Arabs said, what do you mean? We've been in control for 1,000 years. They're going to come take it from us? And this created a lot of tension. This man over here, Hajj Amin al-Husseini, he was appointed in 1921 to the Grand Mufti of Yerushalayim. And one of the things he said right away when he got in charge, Al-Aqsa will fall into Jewish hands. We need to do things about it. And he managed to incite all the Muslims and said, you know, we have to protect our holy sites. The Jews are going to take them. And one of the things that he established is said, okay, any Muslims that are important, we need to bury on top of Har HaBayit. And we're going to see pictures where they're conducting funerals on the holy site. Another thing, just reasons people would start riots. They have riots in the 1920s known as the Nabi Musa riots, that the Muslims that came and they started killing Jews In 1929, they put a mechitza by the Kotel, and that created a whole reason for riot. 1936, more riots, and this constant tension. Also, in terms of the British having Jews come to the Kotel, are they allowed to bring a bench? Are they not allowed to bring a bench? Do they have to stand? Do they sit? Shafarat, no shafarat. So that in itself is another class, which maybe I'll give one day. So there's a ton of tension. Here we have a picture. We see a British plane patrolling above Har HaBayit because there's rioting going on during the Nabi Musa riots. We see here a funeral being carried out with Har HaBayit in the background, and the rioting, which really gained more traction when the British were ruling. Later on, we'll see today what the status is. I will leave you off on a positive note. I also will say that every time I talk about it, and even now, my stomach is in knots because I get nervous from it, that I get bothered by a lot of the things, and it really makes my stomach knot up. So this picture doesn't exactly have a calming effect on me. I don't know how all you feel looking about it, but I'm just going to throw that out. Now we're going to, after the British rule, so we have the War of Independence, they leave Israel. And then, unfortunately for us, the Jordanians gained control of the Old City. So from 1948 to 1967, if Jewish people want to go into the Old City, they can't. They would stand on Had Zion and look from afar. We're going to see a picture of that. This over here is a very famous picture where the Jews, they're evacuating the Jewish quarter because that's it. They can't live in the Jewish quarter. They put up a tough fight, but now they're getting kicked out. And we see over here that the Jews are standing on the roof and they're trying to look out towards the old city. Now, I have a friend who was a child at this time, and she said that she would go with her dad and they would go on the roof and they try to look out towards Har HaBayit, towards the Kotel. And the adults would all say, you see, over there, you see the Kotel? And the kids would nod along and say that they could see. But the truth is, no one could see anything. All they could see was trees. And now, how lucky are we that we don't even think twice about it, or maybe you do think twice about it, that we get to just go and visit these areas, and we don't have to just look from afar. Now, now that the Jordanians are in control and the Jews can't go in, so Jordan says this is a great opportunity for us because we want to show the Muslim world that we are protecting the holy sites. So we see a picture here of King Hussein of Jordan, and I'm reading over here from the bottom, flies his helicopter over the Dome of the Rock during renovations. So I said earlier that the color of the dome, it wasn't gold like it is today. So now in his renovations from 1958 to 1964, what he did is he replaced the lead with aluminum, like gold-plated aluminum. Now it's still not gold, but it has a nice sheen to it. It looks like gold. So that was one of the things that he did. And here's a picture of him flying over. Another picture, religion class. We see they're learning maybe something about the Quran, something about the Muslim religion, and in the background we see Har HaBayit. Okay. Now we are brought to the 6-Day War, which is a really great war for us because we got control over so many parts of Eretz Yisrael, and especially of the Old City. Here we have paratroopers that are going up to Har HaBayit. We're getting it under control, and we have the famous line of Har HaBayit beyadenu, Har HaBayit is in our hands. We see another picture of the paratroopers hanging up at Degel Israel. They are so proud that finally, after so many years, we get to go back. We get to come back. Another picture of paratroopers. And here's also an interesting line. Israelis saw Jerusalem as liberated and reunited, right? The 6-Day War. While to Arab eyes, Jerusalem was occupied. And they look at it in the exact opposite. They said, now you're occupying us. You're occupying a holy Muslim site. And this belief of theirs is what leads to a lot of what is still going on to this day. Okay. Here is a photograph of what the Kotel used to look like before 1967. If you guys notice over here, all these houses, this is something known as Shchunat HaMugrabim. During Salah ad-Din's rule, he was a Muslim ruler. He encouraged Muslims from North Africa to come. He said, we want to strengthen the Muslim presence in the old city, so come and live here. And they're literally living attached to the Kotel. And we see how narrow was the area where the Jews could go and pray. And like, just think of what it is today, right? Look what it used to look like. So this is the area over there. And right after the 6-day war, we see here a tractor, volunteer tractors, they came and they bulldozed down the entire Shkunat HaMugrabim soon after, because they said, no, it's Shavuot in a few days, and the Jews have a custom to come to the Kotel on Shavuot, and we need to make room. So we see that they're bulldozing it down, right? It's hard to picture this, and if these are pictures that you're seeing for the first time, I'm happy to share it with you, because it's not something we used to sing. We used to sing the Kotel, it is nowadays, but this is really nice. And here is a picture in 1971 of Jews streaming to the Western Wall, and look at all the space that was created. I also want to point out something. I know when I go and I pray by the Kotel, I personally like standing back, because it helps me remember that the Ikar is not the Kotel, the Ikar is Har HaBayit, is what is behind it. So that's really something very important to keep in mind. And as we continue this Zoom, you'll see why I'm mentioning it. So always remember, what we want is what's behind the wall. Oh my gosh, I have to finish in 5 minutes. Yeah. Okay, time flies. So here's a picture of a wedding. First wedding after the 6-day war. What is the status of Har HaBayit today? So a very famous line, painful line, is right after the 6-day war, Defense Minister Moshe Dayan said, what do we need this Vatican for? He saw control of Har HaBayit as just this big headache, and because he saw it that way, he has a meeting on June 17th with the Muslims, and he says, you know what, this is what we'll do. We'll have the keys to the gates, but the whole Askanat on top, the Waqf, which is the Muslim police, could be in charge of it. And that decision is really what leads to all the unclarity today and the tension, because the Jews can't pray, and it has a lot to do. We said, okay, you know, we don't want to deal with it, you deal with that. I also want to remind us that after Shlomo Melech built Beit HaMikdash, he prayed to God and he said, every tefillah that a person comes, ufaras kapav, ata tishma, you listen. So when I know I mentioned a second ago, when I go and pray by the area, I always like remembering I am in the place where my tefillah go straight to Kadosh Baruch Hu, and this is where the Beit HaMikdash was, and I like thinking back all the other things. So we always need to remember that. This is a picture from 1994 of Muslims on top of the Kotel throwing stones down. Here is a picture of the Kotel Plaza filled with stones from 1995, 96. Here, this picture I love, more renovations. In 1994, King Hussein of Jordan, he donated millions of dollars and 150 kilos of gold to actually put real gold on top of Har HaBayit. So now it has actual real gold on it. So these are some pictures. This one I love because you really get a perspective as to how big the thing on top is, which we see on mosques, the crescent. This one, stones collected inside of Al-Aqsa Mosque for throwing during the riot. Muslims writing on top that they don't want the Jews to come. A boy playing soccer on Har HaBayit. Women taking a selfie in front of Har HaBayit. Well, my stomach is really nuts. Prayer service during the month of Ramadan. Now, Jewish Israelis began to view 1967 as a missed opportunity, and this belief has grown over the years. Now, we saw some of the things that go on the Muslim side, what goes on in the Jewish side. So sometimes flyers come out such as this, Har HaBayit Shelano, and what the Muslims say, they go, you know, you guys have this plan, you want to take over. Now, I'm not going to say they're wrong, because we do want to rebuild the third Beit HaMikdash, and people we are explicit about it, but the way that it's done maybe is something to discuss. Now, what do? So there's this place called Machane Mikdash, and you see over here, there's a man, he's a Kohen, and he has a fake cow, and the Machane Mikdash, what they do, they literally train Kohanim, and around the holiday time, they have the reenactments of what it would look like in the time of the Beit HaMikdash. This picture I love. The perspective is really great. It's from the Eshat Torah roof. There's a model of Har HaBayit. Here are Jews that are going up to the Temple Mount. Now, I'm not going to talk about that change, about Jews going up versus not being allowed at all, because I already gave a Zoom on that, and I know my time is up. But that, if you're interested in Jews going up and the change of that, search me on YouTube and you'll find it. So now Jews do go up to Har HaBayit today. There is a halachically permissible route based on if you hold by the rabbis that hold it's halachically permissible. There is a route you can take. And this is one of the most exciting things for me, that Jewish prayers return to the Temple Mount for years and years and years. If you pray, if they see your mouth moving in prayer, they throw you in jail. Today, that's not the case. But at the same time, this was in the headlines recently. Islamic group illegally excavates Temple Mount during Corona closure. So they dig and they throw things out because if we don't find remains of the Beit HaMikdash, then there's no Beit HaMikdash. So the constant tension is always going on. Now, I'm not going to say on top of Har HaBayit is rights every day because there's not. That's what we hear about. But it's a tense place to be. And I'm going to skip. I want to just summarize what we saw today. So we started out with, we discussed the significance of Har HaBayit. We studied the foundation stone, Akedat Yitzchak, Batei Mikdash. We spoke about the changes over time. We said 1839 was the first photograph. We spoke about the British ruling. The tensions were rising now that the Muslims are afraid that the Jews are going to take over the holy sites. The Jordanian rule of the Old City, where it was renovated for the first time. The Six-Day War, where we finally got back control of Har HaBayit. And Moshe Dayan's line, what do we need this Vatican for, which established a status quo. And the Jews realizing today that this is such a huge missed opportunity. Har HaBayit, our most holy and special area, how could we not be in control over it? Now, if you're going to walk on it is another story, but at least be in control and be allowed to pray there. We spoke about renovations of the Temple Mount, and we saw some pictures of Har HaBayit today, unfortunately, of the soccer playing and things like that, which go on. Now, what is the answer to all of this? I might have been comfortable to see some of these things. So I think if we open up Yeshayahu tells us, Sion b'mishpat tipadeh v'shaveh b'tzedakah. What's the answer to all of this? You know, yes, we can build the Beit HaMikdash today, but if the society is not where it needs to be, then it's, you know, going to be destroyed again. So the way I take this pasuk home is I ask myself, how am I bringing more peace and justice to the world? Because I know I could worry about myself. Am I making relationships with people that are different than me to try to understand who they are? Am I a part of the peace process? What about in my own family? Could you imagine if every single family had peace among all the siblings, among all the parents? Then the whole world would be at peace. You know, it starts with that. It starts with your own family. And I want to bless you with Tizku L'ra'ot B'nechamat Zion. Thank you so much for joining, and have an easy and meaningful rest of the day.